Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome. We carry on, and today is it the fourth session, I think?
Yes.
Yeah, and we're going on to the wisdom literature. I know somebody, I think you were talking about, are we doing prophets today? Actually, it would have made more sense to do prophets today. In the sense, because we ended with the story with the historical books, and then sort of the divided kingdom, and both kingdoms are sort of being, so to say, destroyed or conquered by the Babylonians and then the Persians. And then actually the prophets keep on talking to people, sort of giving them hope that God will restore you again. It's all right. Good morning. This chair there. This chair there. Oh, there is chair there. Yeah. So it would have kind of continued with the story of where we ended last time. But the reason we're doing wisdom literature is because after the historical books, that's what you find in your Bible. You find then the wisdom literature in between, so it doesn't go straight on to prophets. So we're just following the order that is in the Bible. But I said from a different point of view, it would make more sense actually even if in the Bible actually you had the prophets and then had this sort of wisdom literature afterwards, because it's a different category of books. It doesn't talk about the history, yet there are historical sort of hints there, some historical events at the background of what is said, like some of the Psalms, for example. But it doesn't really talk about history. So anyway, that's what we have in the Bible. So we're going to talk about wisdom literature. Do you have any idea what books come under wisdom literature? What is the part of the Bible that is kind of in the middle? Again, if you were to look for a wisdom book, we'll see which books are categorized as wisdom literature. But if you were to look, where would you find? So far, we've been very systematic. We've done Pentateuch, we've done the historical books. Remember, I'm going back. We started off with Genesis, then Exodus, and then Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy, Judges, and on to Samuel. In between there was Ruth, but Samuel 1 to Kings 1 to Chronicles 1 to, and then there was, as I said, Ruth in between. There was Judith in between, and sort of Tobit in there as well. Some of the apocryphal books. So it's a very systematic way moving on. But today we just kind of come in with the wisdom literature. They don't cover a period of history, and as it is easy to remember the first books as we have just done, the wisdom might be slightly difficult to remember. But what are the books? Any idea which? Proverbs, yes. Song of Solomon, yeah. Psalms, yes.
There must be others. Ecclesiastes.
Yes.
Okay.
There are the two of the apocryphal books are in there as well. One is Ecclesiastes, we mentioned. Yeah, the one of the apocryphal is called Ecclesiasticus.
Oh, yes.
And it's also known as Ben Sirach. And the other famous book, Wisdom, the Book of Wisdom.
That's Proverbs in there.
And there is Proverbs in there as well. So these are more or less all of the books. I think we're missing one, but anyway, it will come. So these are the books that are categorized as wisdom literature. As it's known from the word itself, wisdom, they talk about wisdom. One of the obvious ones we didn't mention is Job.
Of course.
Book of Job. So those are your wisdom literature books. So So according to the Hebrew wisdom, the beginning of wisdom is the fear of the Lord. I think we heard this quote, and a lot of people do remember this by heart. Wisdom literature in the Hebrew Bible is also called poetical books. And I think we mentioned Song of Songs is very poetic. And Psalms are poetic actually. And we know they are even at our choral even song, and it's set in the lectionary, those kind of mainstream churches like Roman Catholic, Anglican, and even some of the Orthodox churches. You have psalms, and in many churches, actually that psalm after the Old Testament reading would be sung. So that's a poetic setting, and those in the choir, they know all the psalms actually are set to sort of musical settings. The authorship, this is sort of generally talking about the wisdom literature, not just a particular book. Authorship usually is attributed to, or most of the books, if not all, to Solomon, as he was considered one of the wisest men on earth. So many of the wisdom literature books, not all, are attributed to him. Did not write it all, but seen as the beginning of wisdom movement. So even if he did not write all the wisdom literature books, but he is one of those who probably started about wisdom. He might not have written, but many are attributed to him, that he was a wise man and therefore he would have said those things. They are not written all at once, even though we say they are wisdom literature, but they're not written at one go. In a similar way, when we said historical books, they cover a period of history starting from Joshua, coming down to the kings and so on. So similar way. Morning. There's a chair there as well.
Thank you.
Many of them, if you read them, you would find them as collection of ancient hymns used in temple worship. And that is true for many of the Psalms. When we look at the Psalms, you will find many of the Psalms actually were sung as part of the Jewish worship. And, as we know, as part of our worship as well. And in some countries and cultures, Psalms are really remembered by people by heart. If you were to go to Pakistan, we hardly use hymn books in Pakistan for singing, unless they are newish hymns. But when we are talking about psalms, singing psalms, all you say is, we sing psalm so and so. And if you say the first verse of the psalm, first line of the psalm, everybody will join in singing. Without any books or anything, they will know it by heart. Because in Punjabi, all the psalms actually are translated into Punjabi and in a musical setting. So someone just need to start. Remember the first verse and there you go. And everybody remembers. So that just says that the musical sort of so musical and so powerful as well. Even though we say kind of Psalms, as a book of Psalm is attributed to David, but he did not write all the Psalms. And when we look into Psalms in a more specific way, you will see actually there are Psalms that are not written by David, but most of them are or attributed. But generally speaking, you would say when you're talking about the book of Psalms, you would say attributed to David. Final question in post-exilic period. Do you remember now? Because you remember when we were talking about the historical books, I said the key dates to remember are the fall of the Northern Kingdom in 521-22, somewhere around that. And that's when the Northern Kingdom, the one when we saw the map, the one on the top, was fallen and went under the rule of Assyrians. Then the next bit, very often when you're reading the Bible or when you hear talks from biblical scholars, and whenever they say, oh, this is a pre-exilic literature, or this is pre-exilic event, or this is post-exilic event. Like we say post-Brexit will be exact Brexit kind of thing, which is a significant event in, so to say, the modern British history. So in a similar way, the key date to remember when you're talking about exile, and I mentioned it on Sunday as well, in our sort of service, in my sermon, is 587. So any event that is mentioned as pre-exilic event or pre-exile, you have to think before 587. Anything, any book, any prophet, any historical event in the Bible, pre-exilic, pre-exile, you automatically would think before 87. And that actually helps you to understand the biblical stories as well. And when this is saying post-exilic, so you can, if you know that event, 587, that's when the kingdom of Judah fell to the Babylon. And that's when they were taken into exile. 587, taken into the exile of Babylon. And so, when you're talking about post-exilic, what would you think?
When they come back.
Any event,
Come back, yeah.
when they came back, but also any event mentioned or any historical sort of big event mentioned, oh, this is a post-exilic. So you would automatically begin to think it must have happened after 587. You see how important it is to remember the historical event. So post-exilic meaning automatically after 587, so that's 350 BC. That's when all the sort of final collection of books of wisdom literature came together or was put together. So the first book of, if you open your Bible, if you have your Bible, the first book of wisdom literature would be Job. Then Psalms, then Proverbs, then Ecclesiastes, then Song of Songs, which is also known as Song of Solomon. And then you have the Deuterocanonical books, or also known as apocryphal books. Wisdom of Solomon, also sometimes just known as Wisdom or Book of Wisdom, and Ecclesiasticus, which is also known as Ben Sirach. So these are your 5 to 7 books. So you remember now, again, if you're counting how many books in the Bible are, I'm referring to sort of what we've done already. 5 books of Pentateuch. We said 12 historical books, or could be 16 when you add the Deuterocanonical or you add apocryphal books. So 16 of those, that's 21. Now you're talking about 7 of these, 28.
So is the Wisdom of Solomon and Ecclesiastes within Deuteronomy?
No. What this means is this Deuterocanonical. It's a tricky word in the sense. Deutero means second actually. And even the book of Deuteronomy, do you remember we said it's the second law? Deutero literally means second. So Deuterocanonical, if you break it down, the second canon. So apocryphal books, that's 7 books that are known as Apocrypha, sometimes they are referred to as Deuterocanonical books, meaning this is the second canon. So they were decided later on. The first canon was 39 books of the Old Testament or the Hebrew Bible, and these was later on, sort of added later on. So that's why they're called Deuterocanonical books. But they have nothing to do with the book of Deuteronomy. It's just a term used. Sorry.
Oh, slightly.
It's all right.
Sorry for being late.
No problem.
Good morning, all.
So how many books have we got then so far? We said 16 and 5. 21 and 7, 28, and then the 16 books of prophets. Do your maths.
44.
How many?
44.
44. So in order to make it sort of 45, there's a book of Lamentations sometimes of Jeremiah divided as a single book. So you know your all the books now in the Old Testament. You see how easy it is to remember. Yes. Okay, and these are the wisdom literature. As I said, the second two books, Wisdom of Solomon and Ecclesiasticus, even though there are 7 apocryphal books, but they're not put together. Sometimes in some of the Bibles, they are put together as apocryphal books. And I think it was Martin Luther did that in the beginning, and then he took them out. But in the mainstream Bibles, you would find them categorized as those which have a sort of historical contents, like we saw Maccabees, that is put together as historical literature. Because these have a sort of wisdom contents, both of them, so they're put together with the wisdom literature. Again, Book of Wisdom and Book of Ecclesiasticus, it depends what Bible you have in your hand. If you had, for example, this is the King James Version, you wouldn't find these 2 books in there. If you had this is the Catholic Bible, you would have it there. So again, it depends. And some people I know have heard when you say a reading from the Book of Wisdom, if you haven't been to sort of Catholic Church or even some Anglican traditions would have that, you would say, where does this come from? Yeah. Okay, we're going to move on to the book of Job. What do you know about Job? It's a wonderful story, and some people know that, and it's quoted in the New Testament. Yes.
Still quoting the patience of Job.
Patience of Job. Yes, we quote that.
Suffering of Job. Yes, he had terrible.
He had a disagreement with God over Nineveh.
Yeah.
Am I
Okay.
the right one?
No.
No, I'm on Jonah.
You're on Jonah.
Oh,
What else do we know? Yes, we know about the patience of Job.
Terrible
We know
suffering.
that.
His sufferings.
We know about his
He
suffering.
lost a lot.
Suffering as
He
well.
lost everything at one stage.
He lost everything.
And then
Yes.
came through. At the very end, everything came back.
Everything restored.
Yes.
Sort of back.
Yes.
That's basically the story of Job. But the way it starts is a very interesting one. It kind of starts, so let's go with the date. The story takes place during the period of the patriarchs. Now, again, a biblical term, to put it into context, you need to know who are the patriarchs. Because if you're reading any article or anything and the writer just says, oh, this comes from the period of the patriarchs, or this event happened at the time of the patriarchs. So basically you're going back to, it could be any period, from Abraham, Isaac, Joseph, and so on and so on. So this story, they say, even though it comes in the sort of after historical books, this might have happened at the time of the patriarchs. The contents basically is wrestling with the issue of suffering of the righteous and the justice of God. Let me go before I go, jump ahead. Wisdom is, then emphasis is wisdom is ultimately found in God alone. Human wisdom cannot fathom the ways of God.
Right.
And I'll say why it says that is really basically, I think, let me go ahead. There's a slide which is coming up, this one. So that's how the book of Job starts. It seems like Job is happy and well and just going on his day-to-day routine in his life, this righteous man, and then one day there's a dialogue between God and Satan. And God saying to him, have you seen my servant Job? He's so righteous and so holy, and he will remain faithful to me. And Satan kind of says, well, he's holy because you're on his side, because you're looking after him. Just give me a free hand and then see what happens. And God says, okay, come. You can't take his life, but apart from that, You can do anything. And that's how the story starts. And then he loses, we said, he loses basically everything. His property, his land, his children, and his animals, and all that kind of thing. And then in between he's got 3 friends, and also his wife. All they say is, curse God and die. Because God is not really looking after him. And then he says, no, I wouldn't curse God. And he has a dialogue between God and explain to him, and then God says, what do you know, kind of thing. And it's a very interesting kind of, it's just a story, just goes on about his life, like a little novel, some people would say as well. But what this story does is really trying to, basically at the heart of the story is really the suffering, the question of suffering, and the question of evil as well, and faithfulness to God. That is really all at the heart of this story. And if you haven't read it, maybe read it whenever you have a time. Probably, if you are one of those who love reading books and can read a book or half a book in a day, this shouldn't take you too long to read. We're still on to Job. These are just slides, I'll print them for you, but as I said, the basic story is God does not always explain himself, not accountable to humans, though he is intimately related to us. That is really, Job asks him, why am I suffering? What have I done? And God, yes, answers him, but then he doesn't have to really explain to him what happens. So the summary of the book is Job has been regarded as one of the greatest literary masterpieces of all time as a book. Question it raises still baffle humanity thousands of years later. So the basic question is, you would have come across maybe a book which says, why do good people suffer? That's what the book is trying to answer. Because Job hasn't done anything wrong. Why is he suffering? And that's the question people have been asking until the book of Job, because this thing was happening. So the book of Job actually is trying to answer that question. And in a way it doesn't really answer that question. Why do good people suffer? And we ask that question even today. Especially when you haven't done anything wrong, so to say, to deserve. We say, what did I do to deserve this? What have I done? And that's the question this book is sort of dealing with. There's no clear answer in that, apart from saying God is in control and he knows what he's doing. Because losing everything when you haven't done anything wrong to deserve that.
Yes.
But then and that's also the test of faith really, as well, of Job. Then again, the message that comes out from the book of Job is really, yes, you might go through difficult times, even when you haven't done anything to deserve that. If you do remain faithful to God and hold on to faith, which is a big challenge, when like Job's family and his friends are saying, curse God and die. And people still ask, you haven't done anything, why do you still believe in God? So that's actually the question at the heart of this book. There's no easy answer, really. Any question or anything you want to say or comment on?
For years I was on Job's side.
Yeah.
It doesn't show God in a very good light, really, does it?
Yeah, to be talking to Satan as well.
Making deals.
But he gave us free will, and this is what it's all about with all these wars, etc. Everyone reads different things into the Bible, don't they? They
Yeah.
take it literally.
Yeah, but free will doesn't account, or free will going the wrong way doesn't account for all suffering. It accounts for a lot of it, but it doesn't account for all of it.
I
You
mean,
know, with people being ill and that kind of thing. You
in
can't say-
this case, I mean, in the beginning it's not the question of the free will, but as the book moves on, there does become a question of the free will. And free will, I mean, the cause of suffering, Job's cause of suffering is not caused by anybody else. It's, in a way, as the book says, it's caused by God himself. Where the Job's free will comes in is when everybody says, curse God and die. And that's when he says, no, I'm not going to do that. Whatever God does, I'm still going to remain faithful to God. That's his free will and choice, whether to curse God and say, there I go, or still say, no, I'm still going to hold on. And you hear stories when say, I left my faith, whatever denomination or church it might be, because I didn't find the answer to what God was, what I was asking God. There are people actually who do say, I left my faith, I left my church, because there can be various reasons, but particularly talking about faith, when there are people who do leave faith because they didn't find an answer to their prayers or answer to their questions from God. Anyway, that's what is at the heart of this book, really. The question of suffering. Why do righteous or good people suffer? And that question is not going to go away. Then we come to Psalms. So the second book of wisdom is Psalms. Have you read Psalms?
Some.
More of them now. You have our news sheet with the psalm for the week on it.
Yes, we have now, and with this, on our Sunday sheet, even though we don't read often. Many churches actually would read Psalm as well. But do you know a general knowledge question? Quiz question. How many Psalms are there?
150.
Him.
152.
150.
150, very close anyway. So 150, there are 150 Psalms. This also in Hebrew is called the book of Tehillim, which means praises. So as you would say, many of the Psalms actually are singing praises to God. Not all, but there are many. So the word of praises comes from there. So they are also called hymns of praise to God. The word psalm comes from a Greek word, psalmoi, which means religious songs performed to music. And we said that in the beginning. So they're naturally, even by nature, they are musical. So you don't even need to know, need to sort of create a music setting for them. And those who sing in the choir, they will know when you sing at the choral even song, you just sing the words as they are. You don't sometimes need to sort of rearrange the word or anything because they're put in such a way, you can just sing them.
Were they always sung, right
Yes.
from when they were first written?
They're right from the beginning, yes, they've been important parts of Jewish worship. And some of them were sung in the temple as well as part of worship. That's how they entered into Christian worship as well, because they have always been part of worship or worship songs. Authorship, I think we already said that, probably many are attributed to David and even written by David. Others probably are by some other people. There's songs of praise like Psalm 33, laments, cries for help in crisis. There are thanksgiving psalms as well. There's songs of trust. There are royal psalms that are said in the sort of in the royal court and to praise kings and things like that. So these are more or less the categories where you can divide the psalms into different categories.
He was a much more educated man than you think, wasn't he, King David, really?
Oh, yeah.
To write all those songs
Yeah,
and everything.
I mean, he might not have written, but he would have definitely sort of
Given the
said and
words.
prayed the words,
Yeah.
those words which said.
That's right.
So the Psalms are used for pilgrimages as well.
Oh,
And we did a Bible study here where I mentioned, actually there is a set of Psalms, Psalm from 121 to 134, they are known as Psalms of Ascent, which basically is, you know, if you read the Jewish history, you would say the Jewish people, not everybody lived in Jerusalem, but Jerusalem was where the temple was and at the heart of their worship. And those who lived far away from Jerusalem, they were required, I think it's in the book of Pentateuch, I don't know exactly which book, but probably in after Exodus, Leviticus probably, somewhere where it said that 3 times a year, if you can, you should go to worship in Jerusalem. So there was a group of people like people even today go on pilgrimage, you know, we say we're going to Walsingham for a pilgrimage, or we went to Holy Land for a pilgrimage and so on. So there were people and communities and groups and individuals, they would go on a pilgrimage from the surrounding areas to Jerusalem. And some of the Psalms were sung as you go on. I don't know when you go on a pilgrimage, like different places or cathedrals or holy places, whether you ever sing anything on your journey. If you were to go to a pilgrimage as a sort of a Pakistani or Indian sort of people, in your group of people in the coach, you would be singing psalms or hymns very often. I went to 3 times, I keep on saying, to the Holy Land. It was all Pakistani group with 3 times. We're always singing, actually moving from one place to another, singing psalms or hymns, but mostly psalms. So people would sing, and they wouldn't go for a 1-hour journey, as you know, if you are going from kind of area of Nazareth to Jerusalem, that is about 80 miles journey. And at that time, it would have taken around 7 days.
oh,
So you're going on a journey, 6 days, 7 days journey, or 2 or 3 days journey. So that in between you will be singing psalms and hymns and things like that. And which psalms did I say they're called Psalms of Ascent? Ascent means going up. 120 to 134. What's Psalm 121? One of my favorite. You ever
That's
heard?
when, yeah, we did.
Lift up my eyes
They
to the
say
hills.
divine.
When I lift up my eyes to the hills, where does my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And that is known as the Pilgrim Psalm. And it actually gives you the idea that actually there was one of the psalms sung when the pilgrims would go. When I lift up my eyes to the hills, so you're going from Nazareth or any other surrounding areas, and what do you say? Jerusalem is built on a hill, a high place, you're going upward, and that's ascent means going up. So you're going up. That's why they're called Psalms of Ascent, means you're sort of slightly moving uphill. So there was so naturally when a pilgrimage is going, what do you see? You try to visualize where you're going, what is ahead of you. So you say, when I lift up my eyes to the hills, because on the way you have to go to the areas which is hilly and rough and dangerous. When I lift up my eyes to the hills, where does my help come from? So it's the psalmist or the pilgrim himself or herself asking that question, and then tries to answer that. My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. So I do not need to fear. It's a wonderful commentaries if you can read of Psalm 121. It gives you a beautiful picture. And I said it, and I think we did it this year when we went to Walsingham. I said, I came across a commentary a few years ago which I really loved. It said the first part actually of that psalm is said by the person who is going on a pilgrimage. And the rest of the psalm, rest of the verses, we're talking about Psalm 121. So, says if you read it sort of while reflecting on it, it says, I lift up my eyes to the hills, from where will my help come? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. That commentary said that these first two verses were read by or said by the person who was going on a pilgrimage. And when you're going on a pilgrimage, especially in the communities, it wasn't just you saying, oh, we're meeting at church at 8 o'clock and so 10 o'clock, whatever time. It was actually the community, your families that were sort of sending you away on a journey. And they were saying goodbye to you. So just imagine it being a small community, small village, and this group of people going, and the other families gather around and then just say, we have come to say farewell to you. And the next bit, this commentary said, the first two verses were said by the pilgrim, and the next bit was said by the community. And listen to the words from verse 3. This is only a short psalm, 8 verses. It says, so, pilgrim, I'm saying that, I lift up my eyes to the hills, from where will my help come from? My help comes from the Lord who made heaven and earth. And you are the community, you would all say, He will not let your foot be moved. He who keeps you will not slumber. He who keeps Israel will neither slumber nor sleep. The Lord is your keeper, like you're saying to me. The Lord is your keeper. The Lord is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. The Lord will keep you from all evil. He will keep your life. The Lord will keep your going out and your coming in from this time and on and forevermore. And you said that as together, and then you say, off you go. And I said, we did a Bible study here last Lent. I said, this is a wonderful psalm. Actually, you can do it even at home today. Let's say you're going on holidays. And if you meet together as a family or friends together, you're going together. One of you says, I'm going on a journey. And then everybody else reads the second bit from verse 3. The God is with you, God will protect you, He will lead you during the day and night. And so it's a wonderful psalm, which can actually be said today and has a relevance today. Anyway, this is just commenting on Psalm 1-1. But all of the Psalms up to from 121 to 134 are known as pilgrim Psalms. And even when you read their first verses, that gives you an idea of saying, again, Psalm 121 says, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. That's how Psalm 122 starts. So basically saying, oh yeah, we're saying, well, we're going on pilgrimage to Walsingham. Do you want to come? Yes, I want to. So I was glad when they said, let us go up to the house of the Lord. We're going on a trip to the Holy Land. Do you want to come? You say, oh yes, I'm glad you asked me. So that kind of feeling, I was glad. So Psalm 122 said, I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. Our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. That's kind of when the pilgrims have arrived at Jerusalem. That's the kind of their thanksgiving. So our feet are standing within your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem built on a city that is bound, and then so on. Pray for the peace of Jerusalem. That's also part of 122. A famous verse, I think a lot of people know that. Again, Psalm 123. To you I lift up my eyes, O you who are enthroned in the heavens, as the eyes of servants look to the Lord, their master, and so on. So if you read 126, then 126 is when the Lord restored the fortunes of Zion, we were like those who dreamed, then our mouth was filled with laughter and our tongue was shores of joyfulness. So you see, just to give you the feel, the idea where some of the Psalms actually, the way they are put together.
I always try to remember 141. Lord, put a guard on my on my mouse.
I mean, some of the psalms, you would see, maybe it will come later. So psalms are used for pilgrimage. They are also used for temple worship. And we said that. Also for private worship and their personal prayers. Many of the psalms, especially attributed to David, you will see them. They are really his personal reflections and meditations. The Lord is my shepherd. That's his personal kind of experience, and the imagery that he uses. He himself was a shepherd. He knew what the rod and the staff are and how it is used, so he applies that imagery to God as his kind of personal experience is projecting onto God, saying, I as a shepherd, this is what I do for my sheep. And therefore God is like a shepherd, and this is what God does to me. And the rod and the staff that I use to protect the sheep, God actually uses that to protect me. So that's written from his personal experience. Again, Psalm 51.
Have mercy on me, Lord. How couldn't you?
Wash me, O Lord, and I shall be whiter than snow.
Yes.
That kind of, how does it start? Again,
He's asking for forgiveness, isn't he?
it is Psalm of forgiveness, yeah. So Psalm 150. Again, you need to know which part of the Bible you need to go to. So the books of wisdom more or less come halfway. So that's what I've done. I've just gone to sort of halfway to the Bible, and Psalm 50. In some places it's numbered as 51. That's numbering. It's due to one of the psalms broken into two parts, and therefore the numbering differs from one to another. But Psalm 50. 51 in this Bible, so. Have mercy on me, O God, according to your steadfast love, according to your abundant mercy, blot out my transgressions, wash me thoroughly from my iniquity and cleanse me from my sin. For I know my transgressions and my sin is ever before me. Against you alone have I sinned and done what is evil in your sight, so that you are justified in your sentence and blameless when you pass judgment. Indeed, I was born guilty, and so on. So there is a real background to this psalm, and that background is when he sinned, the story of Bathsheba.
Yeah.
So he realizes this is what I have done, and then these are his words. And actually most of the psalms have a heading on them as well. It says this one heading is prayer for cleansing and pardon. It says, have mercy on me because this is what I have done. So some of the psalms actually are written from real life situations. There's Psalm 3 as well. That's also based on a real experience of David. And that is when he's running away from his son Absalom, who rebels against him, and he wants to kill him. And Psalm 3, actually, again, when you read that, you can find that there is a context to it. So, my memory is so pressed. So Psalm 3 says, O Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying to me, there is no help for you in God. But you, O Lord, are a shield around me, my glory. So it is actually, the context is, he is running away from his son Absalom, and that's why he's saying, Lord, how many are my foes? Many are rising against me. Many are saying to me, there is no help for you. And as it's in the book of probably Samuel, when he's going away, one of the friend of Saul, because David took after Saul, and he comes and curses David, actually saying, go and die, kind of thing. And that's what is reflected in there as well. So again, Psalm 3, for example, is have a real context. Psalms are part of Israel's worship, I think we already said. Some name the author or collector and relate to specific events. If you read Psalms, most of the Psalms have a heading. They would also say Psalm of David and so on. So 75 Psalms bear David's name, out of 150, so half of them. And I think we already mentioned that. There are Psalms that have a real context to it. These are just kind of, I think I probably more or less have gone through these points already.
Yeah.
But I'll print these for you. The Psalms express the whole range of human feelings and experiences, from dark depression to exuberant joy. So you have, why have you forsaken me, O God? You know, Psalm 22. My Lord, why have you forsaken me? And that kind of thing. So there's sort of moments of abandonness. They are rooted in particular circumstances, yet they are timeless. As I said, timeless. Psalm 121, I just said, when I lift up my eyes. And so, and Psalm 3, I said, there's so many of the people who are against me. And sometimes we do find that kind of thing. Or Psalm of hope and assurance, the Lord is my shepherd, there is nothing I shall. So even though they're written in a particular context, but we can associate with them. Again, these are some of the examples where they recall David's actually real experiences. You see Psalm 21, the David's sin over Bathsheba, and Absalom's rebellion, Psalm 3 and Psalm 15. These are just different, categories of Psalms. The other thing, when talking about real situations, there's another Psalm which gives you an idea, and where it says actually, they don't just cover the pre-exilic period. You know Psalm 137?
No.
That again, if you remember your history of the Bible, and I mentioned that exile and pre-exile and exile and post-exilic periods. Psalm 137 starts with, by the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down and there we wept. When we remembered Zion, on the willows of there we hung up our harps, for there our captors asked us for songs, and our tormentors asked for myrrh, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How could we sing the Lord's song in a foreign land? You see, actually, if you know the bit of the biblical history, you know what they're talking about.
Only Ed made that famous. The band Only Ed.
Yeah, and then
So then everyone knows about it.
and then it carries on. If I do not remember you, if I do not set Jerusalem above my highest joys. Remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall. When did Jerusalem fall? 587. So you see there is a history actually underneath this. So it says, remember, O Lord, against the Edomites, the day of Jerusalem's fall, how they said, tear it down, down to its foundations, O daughter Babylon, you devastator. Happy shall they be who pay you back what you have done to us. Happy shall they be who take your little ones and dash them against the rock. It actually tells the whole history of, and it actually happened. Because then the Babylonian, again going back to my Sunday sermon, Babylonians were overthrown by the Persians. And it was King Cyrus who actually then allowed them to go back and rebuild their temple. So you see some of the Psalms, once you know a bit of the biblical history, you can begin to understand what they're talking about. This Psalm 137 actually sums up that part of from 587 until actually the Cyrus period, 300 something BC, the whole period of exile. We stop here. For a cup of tea.
So exile was a couple of 100 years.
It was actually 70 years. And this, I said I'm hopeless in remembering references, but I remember the contents of the content. And in one of the books, it says actually, after 70 years, I'll bring you back. So that exile lasted 70 years, and after 70 years, they actually were allowed in 350 somewhere. So in total, it was kind of 200 years, basically. But then slowly, they were allowed in groups to come back. So in that sense, you start talking of the return of the exiles, 70 years. But then Book of Esther comes much later, and that is still based in exile. We were saying in the last session, Book of Exile, Esther, where is it based? In Persia. Where is Persia today? Present day Iran. That's where the Book of Esther is based. So we said in the last session that the whole of Israel's history is really, you can go back to the time of Joseph. It's not what is happening today, it's kind of recent event. It actually goes back to sort of thousands of years before Christ. Okay.
Just one second, sir. Joe and the Psalms.
About Psalms, I say, if anybody is new to the Bible reading, the two things where if you find it difficult to read and you don't know where to start from, I say choose two books to start from. One is to either start with Psalms or start with the Gospels. If you're new to reading, because don't start with the Old Testament. Sometimes you would read. So Psalms are a good way to really very good way. I mean, there are others. Psalm 91. There's a beautiful psalm when this COVID came, and there were a lot of people reading that psalm. Psalm 103, one of my favorites. Again, bless the Lord, O my soul, bless the Lord, and everything that is within me, bless the Lord. And then the first 5 verses, especially, and then he said, bless him for the good health, bless him for restores you, bless him for defends you, bless him for protecting. So if you see in the first 5 verses, there are 3 or 4 things that he says, I bless the Lord for this. And again, so relevant to today, you could just read it every day. If not the whole psalm, just first 5 verses. Psalm 103, first 5 verses. Anyway, we're not meeting next week because I'm in London attending a course there. So, from 10th,
Charity.
written around 10th century BC, author again Ecclesiastes. So it starts with the words of the teacher, the son of David, king in Jerusalem. Vanity of vanities, says the teacher. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. What do people gain from all toil, at which they toil under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains forever. The sun rises and the sun goes down, and hurries to the place where it rises. The wind blows to the south and goes around to the north. Round and round goes the wind, and on its circuits the wind returns. All streams run to the sea, and so on. And then at the end said, all things are wearisome, more than one can express. and then it just says all these kind of vanity. So there's a rhythm. And chapter 3, which we were talking about, says, for everything there is a season and a time for every matter under heaven. A time to be born and a time to die. A time to plant and a time to pluck up what is planted. A time to kill and a time to heal. A time to break down and a time to build up. A time to weep and a time to laugh. A time to mourn and a time to dance, and so on. So that famous reading, many of us probably have heard it somewhere. That comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 3.
But does he not sound disillusioned himself, as if he's fed up with everything in life?
It's not, as I said, it's not being fed up, it's coming to a conclusion. Once you've seen everything, then you come to a conclusion that
pointless.
what's the point? And sometimes we say, you've done all your hard work, all your life and all that, you earned everything and you've done it. And then maybe sometime you sit down and you think on all of this and you say, what's the point? Yes. So some people would say, you begin to sort of work really hard and get everything that you need, and some would say, I've got enough now, so I don't. And some would carry on, and at some stage you would say, I've done enough, I'm happy and satisfied. Now what's the point of just killing myself for doing something that
Yeah, and then the man who tore down his barns and built bigger ones in the gospel.
and the gospel reading, God saying to him, tonight I'm going to take your life. Have you heard the story? I think I shared in one of the sermons. Those here might remember. There was a man fishing, and it was around kind of noon time. He caught some fish, and then he put this sort of chair out and just sat there and relaxed. And there was a businessman sort of passing by, and he said, "You seem to be like a fisherman." He said, "Yes, I am." And he said, "Why aren't you fishing?" He said, "I've caught enough." And he said, "Oh, it's only noon time, you still got half a day left. Why don't you catch some more?" And he said, "Yes, I could, but then what?" "Then you could take it to the market and earn some money." He said, "Then what?" "Then you can employ some people, buy other boats and things like that, and catch some more fish and start building your business." He said, "Then what?" He said, "Then you can sort of, after a while, you can just sit down, see your business flourish, and then you can relax, sit and relax." He said, "What do you think I'm doing now?" So there's that kind of thing here as well. So just being sort of, but some people would never have enough.
Yes, exactly.
And that's they think. And it doesn't mean that the more they have, they are happier. They might still have sleepless night, like those who have nothing really. But sleeping on the road, sometimes people have deeper sleep, actually sleeping on the road, than somebody sleeping on the wonderful bed on the wonderful road.
A lot of the lottery winners have had their lives ruined by it.
So-
Yeah, you've only got to look at the sportsmen that have made fortunes and how their lives, so many of their lives have gone really wrong as a result of earning all that money, haven't they?
So the peace doesn't come from the more you have the material. Yes, I mean there are things that are needed to live a sort of decent life, I would say. But the more you have, it doesn't mean you're going to be happier than sort of in life. There are people who have very little and then
They're happy, they're very happy.
so that's what this book actually coming back to. That's what the book of Ecclesiastes is saying. So it's a conclusion. Yes, it comes as a pessimistic also. But this is a person like any of us might be coming to a conclusion. Well, it's at a certain stage in life, saying, "What's the point?" That's what it's saying. What's the point?
Wow.
Moving on. So that's just a bit on the Ecclesiastes. Then Song of Songs. Have you read that? The book. It's a very small book.
Friend's wedding.
Yeah, didn't you?
Yes, that was sent
Sent
to
to
me
you.
to read out as best man, but I've forgotten exactly what it was, but it was a bit dodgy.
For love is stronger than death. That's the bit they read at weddings. Just trying to find.
Sounds like a family
It wasn't that.
Um,
It was a bit, wasn't it?
If you haven't read it, and it's got only 8 chapters. This is something, a very romantic book. And it's just kind of maybe when you are young, a teenager, and first time falling in love or something like that, you might really love reading this book. Kind of thing. It's so romantic. You know, sort of and imagery as well. It's beautiful.
Yeah, sometimes a good way to get people to read the Bible who haven't read the Bible before, who thinks it's all a bit stuffy and boring. You say, read the Song of Songs.
And love is like something.
It says, let him kiss me, starts with the first verse, a song of songs, which is Solomon's, and the verse 2, let him kiss me with the kisses of his mouth, for your love is better than wine, your anointing oils are fragrant, your name is perfume, poured out, therefore the maidens love you, draw me after you, let us make haste, the king has brought me into the chamber. So I'm black and beautiful, O daughters of Jerusalem, like the tents of Kedar, like the curtains, and I compare you, my love, to a mare among Pharaoh's chariots. Your cheeks are comely with a neck with slings of jewels and so on. So yeah, it is actually. Yeah.
So,
So if you want to remember, you are really falling in love. Anyway, so overview. The book is written in marvelous poetry. Content, a love song of several episodes. Said there are 8 chapters. Celebrating the love between a woman and a man. Maybe controversial in today's world. It's full of evocative, and you said
Images.
yeah, so and vivid images. It is celebration of passionate love and marital fidelity, and so on. Again, Song of Songs, love poetry that can be interpreted in many ways. So the church actually sees that's kind of a love story, even though it's talking in a very vivid, clear way of love between a man and a woman. But they also see it as the people of Israel sometimes, and they are not put it as simply because it's a love story, just to have a bit in between halfway through. But they see it as God being the man and the wife. There is that imagery used, in the Bible. God being kind of the bridegroom and the people are the bride. And Jesus uses that imagery as well in the New Testament. So that's one way of interpreting. So it's not just there. You can read it as a love story. A lot of poets have used that as well for their sort of own poetry and romantic sort of poetry. But it's a relationship between God and Israel. And in the New Testament, it's also an image of Christ being the bridegroom and the church being the bride. So that's how the New Testament Christians see it. And the Jews would see it as a God being the bridegroom and the women being the people of Israel. Oh no, we're moving on to the other book, Wisdom. Have you read any of the wisdom? Well, it depends if you ever had a Bible that contains a wisdom.
I know we've got it, but I haven't read it.
Catholics, Anglicans use the apocryphal books as well, so we would have it in our actually sometimes readings, suggested readings, but we don't read it very often. Yeah. Again, I think I read in the beginning a verse from a chapter, a few verses in this session, our session. Those of you who were here, again, a wonderful book that just talks about wisdom, but also talks about God. I'll share with you one chapter or a few verses. So the book was originally written in Greek, and it was probably written somewhere between 250 BC and 50 C, Christian era. And that's why maybe it's not part of the Hebrew canon, not part of the 39, because it was written later on, and it was actually the Catholic Church or the Christian sort of church who kind of made it part of the Bible. The purpose is the book was probably written to encourage Jews living in the diaspora. Again, it's kind of the time of the exile or after the exile. The author tries to make biblical traditions relevant to Jews in new situations. He realizes that they had lived in a secular culture and saw difficulties for them to maintain their culture. So his intention is to highlight God's concern for them. So through this book, God is just reassuring them that God is with you, the book of wisdom. He uses wisdom teachings to make known deep truths about God as revealed in Bible stories and texts. His main point is to press the validity of Jewish faith for contemporary times. So you remember if it's written in the 1st, 2nd century BC, so the Jews are still kind of, some have gone back to the Holy Land, so to say, Jerusalem, and started rebuilding. The others might still be living around in different parts of the world. As I said, I will read you one bit. If you haven't heard, I quite like to use it if somebody, especially with the Catholic or even Anglican background, is looking for a reading for funerals. I think it's a wonderful reading to use. It's a Book of Wisdom, chapter 3. For the souls of the righteous are in the hands of God. It says, but the souls of the righteous are in the hands of God, and no torment will ever touch them. In the eyes of the foolish, they seem to have died, and their departure was thought to be a disaster, and their going from us to be their destruction. But they are at peace. For though in the sight of others they were punished, their hope is full of immortality. Having been disciplined a little, they will receive great good, because God tested them and found them worthy of himself. Like gold in the furnace he tried them, and like a sacrificial burnt offering he accepted them. In the time of their visitation they will shine forth and will run like sparks through the stubble. They will govern nations and rule over peoples, and the Lord will reign over them forever. And the 9th verse, those who trust in him will understand truth, and the faithful will abide with him in love, because grace and mercy are upon his holy ones, and he watches over his elect. Wonderful reading. That's some of the
Really sums up the
Bible
Christian
stories.
faith, really, doesn't it? And then you go on to become part of God's family above or wherever. Yeah.
It's one of the sort of, I know we use Psalm 23, we use sort of from Corinthians for the funeral, we use Gospel sort of for there are many rooms in my Father's house. But this is also a wonderful reading to use for the souls of the righteous are in the hand of God, for no torment will ever touch them. And God sort of tested them throughout their lives, and they remained faithful. Therefore now they are in the hand of God and saved. So it's a wonderful reading too, and unfortunately, as I said, some of the Bibles don't even have that. King James doesn't have that. So that's from Wisdom 3, if you want to remember. So.
Thank you.
The last one, the last wisdom book, Ecclesiasticus. The last book of the Apocrypha, also known as Sirach, which is known as Ben Sirach, meaning Ben means son of Sirach. The only book named for its author, Jesus bin Sirach. So Jesus was a common name actually at the time of Jesus, or even before that, or Yeshua. Probably written around 200, or 180 BC. Ben Sirach combines secular wisdom with biblical wisdom. Most of the book consists of short blocks of sayings on a variety of topics, like Proverbs. So it's kind of very, very similar to the book of Proverbs. Summary of contents, Ben Sirach teachings are rooted in the attainment of wisdom and the fear of the Lord. He doesn't want his students to be successful just by the world standards. he also wants them to be successful by God's standards. So balance between sort of human values and God's, so to say, values. Wealth gained apart from being God's will is worthless. Again, the theme of the previous book that we said, Ecclesiastes. The best way to do God's will is to be faithful to the Jewish ancestral tradition. So he's emphasizing sort of their inheritance, where they come from, therefore telling them to remain faithful to God. And that's it. 7 books in the wisdom literature, 5 you will find them in any Bible. 2 of them are apocryphal, known as also Deuteronomical, which is wisdom and Ecclesiastes or Ben Sirach. So that's your 5, 16, and 7. The first half of the Bible. The next 16 books are prophets, 4 major and 12 minors. So you can know your Bible easily and where to place it. So even when you open your Bible, so you would say, okay, I'm going to read one of the books from the Pentateuch. So you just somewhere go start from the beginning, somewhere here. Then I'm going to read historical books. You sort of move on from here, almost halfway through the Bible. Wisdom literature, one of the wisdom books you're going to go to is Job. So probably that will come after somewhere here. Then the Psalms, and then there's actually a sort of list of the, so you start with Job, you go on to Psalms, you go on to Proverbs, and then what? Ecclesiastes, and then what was it? I'm gone. Anyway, so then once you end with the book of wisdom, then you start with the prophets. So the rest of your Old Testament is all prophet. After wisdom, all the books, sort of rest of your Bible, sort of this bit would be kind of prophets. So if somebody tells you, can you open book of certain prophet, what I will do is just go somewhere here and then start working sort of which way. You see it open with Baruch. So you will start somewhere then there. Any questions? So next session, as I said, not next week, but it will be prophets, basically. And the maps, if you want to, you got the handouts from the last session, historical books. Yeah. But if you have time, try to look at the maps, because the historical prophets would be very much based in those geographical areas. So Southern Kingdom and Northern Kingdom, so you will see some of the prophets actually preached or prophesied in the Northern Kingdom. Once that fell, then all the rest of the prophets would come in the Southern Kingdom. And some would come also, again I'm repeating, your kind of exile period. Some would be before exile, some after exile, and some during the exile. So that bit is really important to remember, the exile with 587. You see the year. Yeah.
Well, we get notes a week after.
Yes, because
which is fine. But we're doing the last session the week after next.
Yeah.
Will you dish 2? Will we get 2?
Yeah, I can do 2.
Do 2 on that day. Right, thank you.
It doesn't really make much difference, even if you have notes, because probably I won't be saying what's on the notes.
We can go back and refresh our memories.
So what I mean is, I don't mind giving you beforehand for the session that I'm doing. Probably I won't be following you.
The notes, there's mental tenor.
Thank you for reminding me. Actually, I'll print both, and for the prophets as well. So select both. Thank you. Have a nice week next week, and we'll meet again for the next week. For those, we're going to Trinity House. So it's 3 days, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, from 9 till 4, I think. Full day. And then 5,000 words of the written assignment. deadline is 18th of December. Couldn't ask for a better time.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Hope these are useful. So.
Yes,